to stop Brainiac, but Supergirl was involved. Now, she didn't come right back to Earth right after Panic in the Sky. I want to say it took a short while for her to finally come back. But when she did, she didn't start off by reuniting with Superman and the Kents. Rather, the first person who she saw upon returning to Earth was Lex Luthor II. And when she looked at this young, handsome man with a full head, of flowing red hair, she first thought that this was her love, Lex Luthor from the Pocket Earth, somehow brought back to life. And Lex II, who was posing as all too a gentlemanly character during this time, comforted her, told her that he was very sorry. He was not her Lex, but wow, she was really pretty, and he really liked her. And so love blossomed between the two, and so May, or Supergirl, as Luthor would call her, became live-in lovers, much to the consternation, of course, of Superman and Clark Kent, but also to Mom and Pa Kent as well, because they really came to see May as their daughter. And it was during this time, looking at 1991 through the better part of 1994, that Supergirl and Lex Luthor were a real item, and they featured quite prominently in all of the Superman titles. This whole time period following Panic in the Sky, thinking about the death and return of Superman, and even beyond that, this was kind of like almost like a mini golden age for the post-crisis Supergirl, in that she was a very valuable supporting cast member. She certainly ruffled a lot of feathers at the time of the death of Superman, because she was listening to Lex Luthor, who was saying to her, no, my love, you can't go and confront Doomsday. I need you here in Metropolis. In case Superman falls, Metropolis needs its defender. So please, just stay back, stay back. And it wasn't until the battle between Superman and Doomsday reached Metropolis that Supergirl finally went out into action and was promptly turned back into a purplish humanoid pile of protoplasmic goo. And this time, the Kents would not be there to nurse her back to health. It would be Lex II. A lot of readers looked at this character and said, well, how can she be so naive? But, it was not lazy writing on the part of the writers. This was actually some very good character development for the Supergirl, because even though physically she appeared to be in her early 20s, she was actually quite young. Perhaps maybe a few months to a few years old. She was an artificially intelligent being. And it also speaks to the brilliance of Lex II, that he was able to convince not just Supergirl, but everybody else, Superman and Clark Kent and Lois Lane and Perry White included, that he really was the long-lost son of Lex Luthor, and that he was an entirely benevolent being. When he was saying to Supergirl, don't go out to the fight, stay back here, Metropolis needs its defender, he was actually making some good sense here. What if Superman fell before the battle reached Metropolis? You couldn't just count on Batman or other heroes to step in. And it was during the whole Funeral for a Friend and World Without a Superman and Reign of the Superman that the post-crisis Supergirl really stepped up and became a valuable hero. Yes, she was still on the naive side, but she was the one who confronted Superboy. Wasn't instantly charmed by his boyish, roguish nature. She was the one who told him that he was wearing the S and he needed to be a hero. And she reached out to him. And in the end, even though she found him annoying at first, she was trying to be a friend to him. She was there when Superman came back and confronted the cyborg Superman, who was in reality Hank Henshaw. Supergirl was the one who took the tattered remains of Superman's black and silver recovery costume and morphed it into Superman's classic costume so that he could emerge from Engine City looking like his usual self, of course with a much longer haircut. And even beyond that, Supergirl was instrumental in helping Superman and Clark Kent both reestablish themselves following the death. Supergirl used her chameleon power to appear as a disheveled-looking Clark Kent who had survived the near destruction of Metropolis during the Doomsday Battle. The story was that Clark Kent had actually fallen into an underground storeroom that had some emergency supplies, and so he was able to live off those until such a point that Superman and others could rescue him. And then, of course, there were pictures showing Clark Kent and Superman standing together. So Supergirl was quite valuable in that regard. And I imagine there were a lot of fans at the time who were saying, she should really get her own book now. I mean, you look at it, Steel got his own book, Superboy, the Kid, got his own book. The Eradicator didn't get his own book, but he did appear as a member of the Outsiders. So why not Supergirl? Well, for whatever reason, whether it be at the editorial level or at the creative level, it was decided that Supergirl would continue to be a supporting character in the Super books. She did get, I want to say, a 2-issue appearance in the Showcase title, which at that time was being used as a sort of a testing ground to gauge reader responses to see if certain characters did have enough support to warrant the publication of a solo title. And evidently, from her appearance in Showcase, it wasn't enough. However, she would get a 4-issue miniseries following the death of Superman, in which she was once again questioning her identity, questioning who she was, what her purpose was. And over the course of the 4 issues, Supergirl would come to learn that Lex Luthor II was actually very much like his father, and that she learned that Lex II had established a secret cloning facility where he was attempting to create a whole army of Supergirl clones who would be at his beck and call. And this was enough to drive Supergirl into a quote-unquote berserker mode, where she used her chameleon power to get this whole berserker look about her. So if you see any comics from the time, and you see a Supergirl who has spiky hair, fangs, protrusions coming out of the costume, this was a look that also appeared in different comics from time to time whenever she got really angry. But she would confront Lex II over this. And, of course, she didn't really get to take out all of her rage against the man who she loved and felt betrayed by, because, of course, Lex II would fall prey to the cloned virus that was affecting all of the various cloned characters in the DCU. This would lead him on the path to destroying Metropolis, and later making that deal with Neron in Underworld Unleashed, which would result in Lex Luthor II re-emerging as the original Lex Luthor, but a Lex Luthor who looked physically like his pre-Crisis incarnation. So tall, athletic, completely bald, but also a scientific genius, in addition to being a genius in the world of business and industry. So it was by, I'd say, early to mid 1994, where the partnership between Lex Luthor and Supergirl came to a close, with Supergirl still not really having answered the question of who she really was and what her purpose was. But going forward now, whereas, like I said at the top of the show, the post-crisis Lex Luthor in the end became the model for future incarnations of Lex Luthor, the post-crisis Supergirl over the remaining years up until 2002 would undergo an incredible evolution, which I'm going to talk a whole lot about in part 2 of this episode. So I think this is a pretty good breaking off point for me. Basically, in part 2, I'm going to look at the post-crisis Supergirl's history from 1996 through 2002. So, of course, I'll be talking about the Peter Allen David run on Supergirl. I want to say the entire Peter David run is available on Comixology. If not the entire run, then certainly the key issues from his run. A fascinating series which took some very interesting twists and turns. So I'll be talking about the highlights of the Peter Allen David run in part 2. And I'll be talking about the ultimate end for the post-crisis Supergirl, and where she appeared following Infinite Crisis. So I'll come back to you guys in a week's time. If you want to get in touch with me before that, you can email me at comicsandhistory@gmail.com, or you can go on over to the Facebook page and post some ideas over there. So consider this class in recess, and I'll see you in another 7 days.